Welcome, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to this presentation for the Western Pearl Reconstruction Project. For our presentation, we will first share a bit of information about who we are and what we do at the Mobility Division. Next, we'll talk about why Western Pearl Street was selected for construction and how our policy plans guide the design. We will then provide an overview of the project scope, anticipated timeline. Following that, we will share back some of the existing conditions data we have collected, as well as a summary of feedback that we heard in the first phase of engagement last fall. We will also talk through some of the tools we can use to improve Western Pearl Street. We will then walk through an overview of two conceptual designs for the street being proposed. Finally, we'll wrap up by discussing what's next and how you can continue to provide input into this project. So first, who are we and what do we do? We want to start by introducing the team of city staff working on this project and discuss the values and guiding plans that we bring to our work on Western Pearl Street. My name is Justin Schreiber, and I'm a senior planner with the Mobility Division. Also from Mobility, we have Viola Augustin, senior planner, and Kate White, transportation planner for outreach and engagement. We'll be working closely with the engineering division of the Department of Infrastructure and Asset Management, who will be responsible for the construction phase of this project. This includes Rebecca Wright, Senior Project Manager for Streetscapes, and Brian Postlewaite, Director of Engineering. I also want to share a bit of background on the values that shape our work. For all of our projects, we start first and foremost with the goal of keeping people safe on our streets. We also aim to increase access to public transportation and to create more sustainable options for people to move around the city. A number of long-range city plans contribute to our vision for this project. Somerville's comprehensive plan, Summer Vision 2040, sets the city's broad values and goals for community-oriented planning. The Climate Forward Plan ensures that our projects also support the city's mission to decarbonize our transportation system. The Americans with Disabilities Act Transition Plan helps us make our streets more accessible for everyone. In addition, our Bicycle Network Plan documents a community-based vision for a citywide network of connected streets and paths where people of all ages and abilities will be able to bike safely and comfortably. Finally, our Vision Zero Action Plan is the city's commitment to eliminate deaths and serious injuries from our streets, and that plan provides a framework for reaching that goal. Now I'll turn it over to Viola to talk about why this project was selected.
Thank you, Justin. There are a few reasons why we are reconstructing Pearl Street from Medford Street to McGrath Highway right now. One reason is that this section to be reconstructed as part of the city's pavement and sidewalk management program. Each year, the city has funding to make surface level street improvements through the pavement and sidewalk management program. It is a data-driven program to maintain and improve our roadways and sidewalks managed by the Department of Infrastructure and Asset Management. As you see on the map here, streets are prioritized based on factors such as pavement quality, sidewalk accessibility, traffic volumes, and network importance in conjunction with overall city goals and construction plans. The result of this evaluation is a list of priority streets to be reconstructed, which is published annually. Selected streets are categorized by project type. Complete street and intersection projects are full street reconstructions that include a complete reevaluation of street design to improve safety and access for all users. In full street projects, generally the surface of the street is renewed, but only minor traffic safety improvements are incorporated. In sidewalk-only projects, the city is simply reconstructing the sidewalks to be fully accessible. In curb-to-curb paving projects, the city is repaving the full roadway. And finally, in partial paving projects, the city is just repaving the travel lane areas of the roadway. You can find out more information about the pavement and sidewalk management program, including an interactive version of the map shown here, on the engineering division's webpage, as well as by following the links on the slide, which which we will share on the project webpage. Western Pearl Street is designated in the paving program to be reconstructed as a complete street. Just a reminder, that was the first category I just read, and it means we can make substantial changes, but not underground utility changes. The Somerville Bicycle Network Plan. Western Pearl Street is also included in the Bicycle Network Plan, which was published by the city in 2023. The plan with the entire network is shown on the slide. The plan aims to provide a connected network for people of all ages and abilities to bike safely and comfortably across the city, and identifies a priority network of bicycle infrastructure to be implemented by 2030. The plan was further codified by the City Council's Safe Streets Ordinance in 2024. Next slide. This image shows a zoomed-in view of the priority bike network in the neighborhood of this project. We can see Western Pearl Street is designated for protected bike lanes in both directions, and it is on the priority network of streets to be implemented by 2030. Because of the narrow width of Pearl Street, providing bike lanes in each direction requires removal of all parking or one-waying the street. In our first round of outreach in the fall of 2024, we presented these two options and a third one to only provide a protected bike lane in one direction and keep parking on one side. We asked community members to share thoughts and feedback. Later in this presentation, Kate will tell you what we heard from the community. What is the project? First, we want to clarify the scope. As is shown on the map, the project will reconstruct Pearl Streets from Medford Streets to McGrath Highway. The intersection of Medford Streets and Pearl Street is included. However, the project ends before Dana Street at the McGrath end. What is included? What we see on the slide is a list of what is included, what is under consideration, and what is not included in the Western Pearl Complete Street reconstruction. Included in this project are reconstruction of sidewalks and curb ramps, repaving of streets from curb to curb, new tree plantings and landscape areas, new and raised crosswalks and intersections, traffic calming, traffic signal evaluation, designated bicycle facilities, bus stop changes, changes to lane widths, and increasing visibility at crossings. What we can consider is parking regulations and traffic calming on nearby streets. What is not included in this Complete Streets project are substantial utility work, street lighting, network redesign, and green stormwater infrastructure. Shown in this slide is the timeline for the project, what we have done so far, and anticipated next steps. We started in the fall of 2024 with a kickoff meeting on October 9th, followed by community outreach to identify issues and decide on design direction. In December of 2024, we started working with a consultant to develop 25% designs. The design development we are now sharing with the public, starting with an open house meeting we had on May 13th. After the second round of community outreach to get feedback on the proposed design, in May and June, we anticipate developing one design to 80% completed, anticipated completion in July and August. In September, we are planning to come back to the community with this 80% design. Again, we will be asking for feedback in September and October. Final 100% designs will be developed after that until approximately the end of the year. We then aim to introduce the 100% design at the beginning of 2025, and at the same time, we are seeking bids for contractors. Construction is then anticipated to take place between spring of 2026 throughout the fall of 2027. And Justin will now tell you what we have learned so far.
Thanks, Viola. Yes, we're going to share with you some of the existing conditions data we have collected so far. So starting with crash data, crash reports are a useful data set that help provide context to the feedback we hear from community members about safety on the street. In total, there were 30 reported crashes on Pearl Street from Medford Street to McGrath Highway between 2019 and 2024. Over those years, with a general trend towards fewer crashes overall. Of the 30 crashes during that time, 4 resulted in minor injuries, and the remaining 26 only involved property damage. Of those 4 injuries, 2 were bicycle related out of 3 total bicycle involved crashes. There were no reports of crashes involving pedestrians, and of note is that about 1 in 4 crashes involved collisions with parked cars or other fixed objects in the roadway, like traffic poles or trees. Although the map on the screen shows a relatively even spread of crashes across the street, the highest crash locations were at Walnut Street with 11 crashes and at Medford Street with 3 crashes. The higher crash occurrence near Walnut Street is likely in part due to the higher volume of vehicles traveling through the intersection compared to other locations on Pearl Street. This slide shows vehicle speed and volume data collected from both west of Walnut Street as well as east of Wigglesworth Street. Overall, Pearl Street sees traffic in each direction at each location of about between 1,700 and 3,000 cars per day, depending on the location, and between 45 and 65 bicycles per direction per day. Overall volumes generally increase as you get closer to McGrath Highway. The data also shows that a majority of people driving exceed the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on Pearl Street, ranging from 41% to almost 73%, depending on location and direction. Between 15 and 33% of vehicles also exceed 25 miles per hour. Speeds appear to generally increase closer to McGrath Highway, and at both these locations, outlier speeds as high as 50 miles per hour were recorded. We also collected data on crosswalk compliance and red light compliance. Over the course of 1 hour at 3 unsignalized crosswalks, 9 pedestrian vehicle interactions were observed, with 7 vehicles yielding and 2 vehicles failing to yield. And then again, over the course of 1 hour at the Walnut Street intersection, 1 vehicle ran the red light during the pedestrian phase. The study likely has too few data points to draw firm conclusions, but it is presented for context. Western Pearl Street is currently served by the MBTA 80 bus, which runs from Lechmere to Arlington Center about every 45 minutes during peak hours and about every 60 minutes off peak. On a typical weekday, approximately 200 people either started or ended a bus trip at the 3 stop pairs in the project area. In the outbound direction towards Arlington Center, the most popular stop is at Walnut Street with about 24 riders per day on weekdays. And in the inbound direction toward Lechmere, the McGrath Highway stop is the most popular with about 38 riders per day on weekdays. In the MBTA's bus network redesign project, the 80 bus was identified to be modified to run only from Arlington Center to Davis Square in the future and not all the way to Lechmere, since much of the remaining existing route parallels the Green Line's Medford Tufts branch. However, since we don't have a specific timeline for when this change will occur, this project will be designed to continue serving this route. The map on the screen on this next slide shows the existing parking regulations on Pearl Street and the surrounding neighborhood within about a 5-minute walk from the project. The vast majority of the parking is regulated as permit parking only, with smaller amounts of accessible parking spaces, as well as 2 and 4 hour time limited parking spaces, except by resident permit. In those 2 and 4 hour time limited spaces, any vehicle can park within the time limit, but they also allow permit holders to stay up to 48 hours at a time. Observing parking patterns in and around the project area helps staff consider how changes on Pearl Street could impact parking patterns in the surrounding neighborhood streets. On Wednesday, April 16th at 6 a.m., staff completed a parking occupancy count on Pearl Street and the streets within about a 5-minute walk of the project. The results of this count are shown on the map on the screen. The study area surrounded by the dotted black line includes capacity for approximately 750 vehicles across 29 different street segments. Overall, in the study area, about 80% occupancy was observed during that time, with 609 spaces occupied and 148 spaces available. We also saw that occupancy varied widely by street segment. 13 of the 29 street segments have 5 or more spaces available. 11 of the 29 street segments had between 1 and 4 spaces available, and 6 of the 29 street segments were at or over capacity. This study is not an exhaustive evaluation of parking in the neighborhood, but it does show that at a neighborhood level, at one of the highest occupancy times of the day, there remains available parking on many streets. However, this availability is not evenly spread, and there are a number of street segments at or over capacity. I will now turn it over to Kate to provide a summary of our first phase of engagement.
Thanks, Justin. So from July 19th to November 20th of 2024, we worked to engage community members in this project. We aim to spread awareness about the construction project, including the opportunities and limitations in a pavement and sidewalk management program project, hear insight into how the streets in the project are used, learn about community members' transportation safety concerns, understand preferences among three design options, and gather feedback on ways to make the streets safer, more accessible, more sustainable, and more comfortable for all people traveling on the street. If you'd like to learn more about more detail about how we engage community members and what we heard, please check out our pre-concept community engagement report available at somervillema.gov/Western Pearl. So over the next couple of slides, I'll provide highlights of our engagement activities and what we heard. First, I'll focus on what we did. So in the summer, we gathered with youth empowerment and climate justice organization Groundwork Somerville to host 3 street design workshops together, young adult insight on safety issues and priorities for Pearl Street. We then launched the larger pilot project by broadcasting the project overview and virtual community meeting details in tools like our mobility monthly newsletter on September 4th, sharing flyers at Mayor's Senior Picnic Gilman Square Arts Festival, posting flyers on over 200 homes in the project area, and sending email notifications to City Alert subscribers within the project area. In early October, we hosted the first community meeting and followed this with an outreach pop-up at the intersection of Medford Street and Pearl Street to spread the word about the project and again collect community feedback on their safety concerns and ideas. We hosted a dedicated on-site meeting for Pearl Street Park residents in mid-November and visited with small businesses with storefronts in the area to share information and hear about the business operational needs. We hosted a virtual office hour to close out this phase of community engagement. And from October through November, we also facilitated an online feedback survey and public input map, along with collecting emails from community members. We closed out this phase of community engagement by posting flyers on over 350 homes to promote the survey before the deadline. Overall, we estimate that we connected with over 485 people during this phase of outreach. I'll now share some highlights of what we heard. Regarding the transit experience, we heard concerns about the MBTA removing the Route 80 and requests the city to advocate for maintaining the route. We heard requests for benches or bus shelters, especially near the stops, or for the stops near Walnut Street. Regarding the biking experience, we heard advocacy for installing protected bike lanes in both directions. Some shared that the community passes a rather high demand, so there's a need for other east and west connections throughout the neighborhood. We heard requests to strengthen the neighborway and contraflow biking options nearby, rather than pursuing protected bike lanes in both directions. Regarding the pedestrian experience, community members described their safety concerns about the sidewalk's poor condition, missing tactile warning pads, and missing curb ramps. We heard requests to provide more sidewalk space to increase capacity for pedestrian activity, especially as the sidewalk is frequently used by high school students traveling to Somerville High School up the hill. We heard requests for raised crosswalks at each crossing across Pearl Street and across nearby streets to encourage people to slow down. We heard advocacy for improving connectivity and safety at the Pearl Street and Medford Street intersection, and many shared that they were concerned about speeding along the street. Some asked us to also reduce the high incidence of illegal parking on crosswalks. Overall, we heard a lot of advocacy to improve crosswalks. Regarding street condition, folks shared that the poor quality street pavement makes it unsafe to both drive and bike. Community members shared that there is a lack of trash cans and frequent litter in the area. We heard requests for more street lighting. Regarding parking, we heard community members share concerns about removing parking. Some shared that they felt parking removal could contribute to more safety issues at crossings. We heard the desire to maintain parking options for residents, home care workers, especially that serve Pearl Street Park residents, ride shares that travel a lot to nearby businesses, and deliveries. Regarding the environment, some of our youth participants described how they felt the air quality was subpar. We also heard from community members about desire for more trees for shade. In our survey, we just asked a broad question about overall feelings of safety on the street. 20% said they were very concerned about safety, 44% said they were concerned, and 36% said they were not concerned. Diving into some of the input we heard about specific intersections at Pearl Street and Medford Street, some of the major highlights included a desire to reduce speeding, increase stop sign compliance, and create a safe crossing across Medford Street. As a lot of people want to cross this location, there's not a crossing at this time. Community members shared their concerns about low stop sign compliance on Pearl Street and described that there is poor visibility for people driving. We heard requests for tools such as rectangular rapid flashing beacons or RFBs or traffic lights. Nearby, we also heard a lot of input about Pearl Street and Marshall Street. People described how they feel people don't yield to pedestrians trying to cross, both at Pearl Street or Marshall Street. People also described how often vehicles will sit on the crosswalk across Marshall Street to be able to see other motor vehicles rather than paying attention to pedestrians trying to cross. We heard requests for tools such as raised crosswalks or RFBs. And then at Pearl Street at Walnut Street, we heard requests to move the crosswalk closer to the intersection, much more than the desired path of travel, as they are rather set back at this time. Some requested a raised intersection at this location. We heard concerns about red light running and aggressive driving behavior through this intersection. And some also advocated for maintaining the signals at the intersection because they feel safer having their children cross at the intersection with traffic signals. So that's some of our intersection specific feedback. We want to share some feedback we received about the 3 design options we presented last fall. So as Viola described a little bit earlier, option 1 focuses on providing protected bike lanes in both directions, having flexible space to consider which precludes having flexible space to consider parking, curb extensions, wider sidewalks, and tree bump outs. Option 2 we offered one way in the street, providing protected bike lanes in both directions and flexible space for some of these more, wider sidewalks and tree bump outs. Option 3 included a protected bike lane in one direction, flexible space, and two-way motor vehicle traffic. So we dive into detail about what we heard regarding these 3 options in our pre-concept community engagement report, but in this presentation, we'll highlight some of the major reasons people shared when picking an option preference. Just across the board, we wanted to share what we heard in our survey. In our survey, about 25% preferred option 1, 22% preferred option 2, and 29% preferred option 3. In direct outreach, we tended to hear support for both option 1 and option 3. Some of the reasons that folks preferred option 1 were that it fulfilled the commitment in the Bicycle Network Plan and Safe Streets Ordinance. It provided bike facilities that could ease some of the demand on the commuting path and connect to future protective facilities on McGrath Boulevard. Community members shared that they didn't want to prioritize parking options over safety, and some shared that they were concerned about one way in the street, removing options to close Medford Street Bridge to motor vehicle access. Some of the reasons some folks preferred option 2 were that they supported reducing overall motor vehicle volume on the street. They liked being able to have protected bike lanes and flexible space to enhance the pedestrian environment and transit experience, and hoped it could make the street feel more like a residential street. Some of the reasons some folks preferred option 3 were that they were concerned about no pullover space for deliveries and ride shares, potentially encouraging people driving to park on future protected bike lanes or block traffic. Some who identified as bike riders who live on Pearl Street or nearby described how they were satisfied with the existing Gilman Street neighborway as an east-west biking connection to travel under McGrath Highway, and they were more interested in strengthening that connection and the Marshall Street contraflow options, in addition to considering more traffic calming in the area. Many wanted to focus the design on pedestrian improvements with curb extensions and considering more space for plant life. Many requested to maintain parking options for residents, home health care workers, and deliveries. And some wish to maintain two-way motor vehicle traffic because they didn't want emergency services to be impeded or to have to always use McGrath Highway to access their home by car. So with all of that, we want to share kind of what designs are being proposed. We'll first focus on some of the tools that we can and features we can use to increase safety. I'll define some of these tools that we specifically can use in resurfacing projects. So one of our favorite tools that we're really excited to use in resurfacing projects are raised crosswalks at intersections. These make crossing the street safer and more comfortable. Since they are elevated sidewalk height, people driving must slow down as they approach the crossing. And they also enable people using wheelchairs and other mobility devices to cross more easily, as you don't have to ramp down and ramp up. Curve extensions are another tool that extend the sidewalk at the crossing to shorten the distance from one side of the street to the other. They also help people driving to see people crossing and other vehicles by preventing vehicles from parking too close to the crossing. Another tool is our rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RFBs, which are push-button activated flashing crosswalk signs. When a person pushes the button, the sign begins flashing yellow for a period of time to help alert people driving that someone's in the crosswalk, and some are equipped with audio capabilities. We generally use this specific tool on higher vehicle volume streets. And in this phase of the design, we didn't propose any RFBs, but still welcome any feedback of specific locations. Some other tools we can use are floating bus stops. These are sidewalk extensions that provide dedicated waiting space for bus riders outside the paths of travel for people walking, rolling, and biking. They streamline bus service and improve accessibility by enabling the bus to stop in the travel lane rather than having to pull over. In-lane bus stops provide a similar experience, but do not include a protected bike lane between the bus stop and the sidewalk. Protected bike lanes are another tool, and they increase comfort and access for people of all ages and abilities. They reduce crash and injury risks and eliminate the threat of dooring from parked vehicles. So they also encourage slower traffic speeds by visually narrowing the street. Another tool is clear corners. Parked vehicles near crosswalks can block views of people crossing the street and people driving on intersecting streets. So parking within 20 feet of a crossing is not permitted under local, state, and federal guidelines. So by installing what we call clear corners, which includes using pavement markings and sometimes tools like flex posts, restrict the parking ahead. And we can increase the visibility for all users, kind of as depicted in this visual where the cars are removed from the crossing and you can now see the children crossing and the people crossing the parallel crossing. This tool also helps reduce the likelihood of crashes. The last tool I'll describe today is our parking regulations. We can change or adjust the types of parking we have available in the area by rethinking the regulations. At the next design update later this year, we'll share proposed parking regulation changes. This includes which side of the street parking will be located on, as well as changes to parking regulations to address the feedback we've been hearing about parking needs. Regulation changes could include new accessible spaces for general use, new loading zones for business use and/or passenger pickup or drop-off near larger apartment buildings. We can have more 2-hour or 4-hour parking for users like visitors or customers or home health aides. And we can consider parking meters to encourage turnover at high demand locations. In some cases, side streets could be used to meet demand for different regulations. So that's a whole bunch of our tools. I'm now going to hand it over to Viola to share more about our proposed concept designs.
Thank you, Kate. So now that we heard about safety tools we can use to improve safety, we want to go through 2 different ways or concepts that we propose to apply these tools throughout Pearl Street. Before we address the design details, I want to point out that we can combine parts of concept 1 with parts of concept 2 for the final design. What that means is that if you like, for example, a bus stop treatment in one concept, but like the bicycle circulation in another concept, we can take that into consideration when we move towards one final design. So when you give feedback, please keep that in mind. That said, both proposed concepts address many of the concerns we heard about. We are proposing curb extensions, raised crosswalks across side streets, and raised crosswalks and non-signalized intersections across Pearl Street to create safer intersections and crossings. Both proposed concepts keep, wherever possible, parking on one side of the street, not unlike what you currently find on Pearl Street. You will see improved bus stops in concept 1 and concept 2. For example, some bus stops that will remove conflicts with bike lanes and some that eliminate the need for buses to pull in and out of the travel lane or in-lane bus stop, as Kate just described. The two concepts also show two different treatments for bicycle infrastructure, but both have a continuous protected bike lane throughout most of Pearl Street, with one section of bike lanes in both directions. Now, before taking a look what distinguishes both concepts, we want to explain why we made a decision to move forward with a combination of two-way bicycle lane and one-way bicycle lane. All of our designs put safety first. Safety impacts have priority for all our street improvements. In addition to safety for vulnerable users of the street, we work with the fire department to ensure that they can operate in a fast and efficient manner. Learning from other projects, we concluded that providing no curb access on Pearl Street would create significant safety issues. One option to achieve this would be a continuous bike connection in both directions would be to one-way the street. This would force many residents living on one-way streets in the neighborhood onto McGrath Highway, and it would impede fast and efficient emergency operations. By choosing a design with a protected bike lane in one direction and an alternative route through adjacent residential streets in the other direction, we can build a safer street for every user. We are able to incorporate sidewalk improvements, create better pedestrian environment, and keep most parking on one side of the street. So let's look closer at the two concepts and what we're proposing for bicycle facility configuration. As you can see on the two maps, concept one has a continuous bike lane going eastbound from Medford Street to McGrath Highway. A two-way bike lane shown in the green arrow connects Medford Street and Skilton Street. After that, bicycle riders go eastbound, continuing on Pearl Street, indicated with the light blue arrow. Riders that come from McGrath Highway going westbound, shown with the red arrow towards Medford Street, turn left from McGrath Highway into Albright Street. From there, they turn right onto Gilman Street, then continue on this existing neighborway connection across Walnut Street, through Ed Leather Park, and travel on Skilton Street to come to the just mentioned two-way bicycle lane on Pearl Street connecting to Medford Street. Concept 2 proposes a continuous bike lane going westbound, indicated with the red arrow. Eastbound travel from Medford Street, shown again with the light blue arrow. We are proposing for people riding bikes to continue up Medford Street Bridge, where they will turn left onto the community path until Walnut Street. They turn left onto the existing two-way bike lane and then right onto the current Gilman Street neighborway until Jasper Street, where they will turn left to then turn right on Pearl Street to the protected bike lane all the way to McGrath Highway. To understand what this means for people riding bicycles, we included a route comparison table that highlights the number of street crossings along Pearl Street. In concept 1, that would be crossing 4 times going eastbound. And in concept 2, one would cross 7 times going westbound from McGrath Highway to Medford Street. To compare the alternative non-Pearl Street route, we looked at the length, slopes, number of street crossings, number of turns, and key connections being passed along the route. Both alternative routes are about 0.34 miles long, in comparison to approximately 0.3 miles for a direct connection going just on Pearl Street. So we're talking about a difference of about 211 feet. The alternative route westbound in concept 1 is relatively flat with a maximum slope of about 2.8% along the route. Going eastbound using the alternative route in concept 2, people riding bicycles will have to go up Medford Street Bridge at about 5.3% slope and then down Walnut Street with a slope of about 10.6%. In concept 1, the alternative route crosses 2 major streets, Pearl Street and Walnut Street, and turns 4 times. This route goes through Ed Leather Park as a key destination. The alternative route for concept 2 also has two major crossings, Medford Street and Walnut Street, and 5 turns. It not only goes by at Leather Park, but also passes the edge of the high school. We are now walking you through the two proposed Pearl Street designs, starting at the intersection of Medford Street to Skilton Street. On the slide, you see the existing aerial showing the large unsafe intersection with no crossing on Medford Street and the long crossing across Pearl Street at Marshall Street. In this slide, you see the proposed Concept 1 treatment for the section of Pearl Street, including the reconfigured Medford Street-Pearl Street intersection. Medford Street is aligned in this concept to intersect perpendicular with Pearl Street. This addresses the speeding we see down and up Medford Street and also follows the 60% Gilman Square streetscape design. The realignment creates a larger curb extension, creating space for pedestrian amenities and room to navigate for people riding bicycles in each direction of the intersection. 2 raised crosswalks, both on Medford Street, create a safer pedestrian experience and connection to the Gilman Square T station. You can see the 2-way bike lanes on Medford Street continues on Pearl Street all the way to Skilton, where it connects to the Neighborway westbound, and changes to after that, it changes to a 1-way bike lane eastbound towards McGrath Highway on Pearl Street. At Marshall Street, a raised intersection and curb extension create a shorter and safer Pearl Street crossing. 2 improved bus stops are shown. On the north side, an in-lane bus stop. On the south side, a floating bus stop shifted east of Skilton to allow for more room for pedestrians to wait and a safe protected bike lane. On-street parking is provided on the north side. This slide now shows Concept 2 for the same section of Pearl Street between Medford Street and Skilton Avenue. This intersection again is realigned, but this time Pearl Street intersects at a right angle with Medford Street. This again creates a larger curb extension, this time on the north side of Pearl Street and Medford Street, and it leaves lots of room for pedestrian amenities next to the piano building. 2 raised crosswalks, one on Medford Street, one on Pearl Street, create shorter and safer pedestrian travel through this intersection. A protected westbound bike lane is shown on the north side of Pearl Street, along with a connection to the 2-way bike lane on Medford Street to the west of Pearl Street. Now I lost my thread. A raised crosswalk on Marshall Street and a shortened and raised crosswalk on Pearl Street create a safer intersection in this location. The bus stops in this concept show an in-lane bus stop on the south side, staying approximately where it currently is, but with a curb extension allowing for more waiting room. The bus stop on the north side shares a lane with people riding bikes. On-street parking here is shown on the south side. Now Justin will walk, or maybe drive or bike, here along the next sections of Pearl Street.
Thanks, Viola. We are now continuing down Pearl Street from Skilton Ave to Jasper Street. On this slide, you'll see the existing aerial view of this section, which is primarily side street intersections, with one more major intersection, the signalized intersection with Walnut Street. Switching over to Concept 1, you can see the treatment for this section of Pearl Street, again, between Skilton Avenue and Jasper Street. There is a sidewalk level, 1-way separated bike lane on the south side of Pearl Street, headed eastbound toward McGrath Highway. The bike lane returns to street level to cross Walnut Street and to pass through a bus stop, and then it returns to sidewalk level. Raised crosswalks are shown across all side streets, as well as curb extensions into Pearl Street on the north side of the intersection to prevent people from parking too close to intersections. At Walnut Street, curb extensions are shown on the north side, on both sides of Walnut, reducing crossing distances across Pearl Street. The westbound bus stop at Walnut Street is relocated after the intersection at one of these curb extensions. This is an in-lane bus stop so that the bus does not need to have to pull in and out of the travel lane. Locating the bus stop so that the bus proceeds through the intersection before stopping allows the bus to operate more efficiently since it does not need to stop twice, once at the bus stop and potentially again at a red light. This is known as a far side bus stop. The eastbound bus stop is similarly moved to the far side of the intersection. It is shown as a pullover bus stop shared with the bike lane. There is not enough room for an in-lane bus stop here due to the curb extension and parking on the opposite side of the street. On-street parking is again shown on the north side of the street. This adds parking in front of some existing businesses, which could be regulated as loading zone. Lastly, clear corners markings are added to parking lanes on Walnut Street to improve visibility at the intersection. This next slide shows concept 2 for the same section of Pearl Street between Skilton and Jasper. There is a sidewalk level one-way separated bike lane on the north side of Pearl Street headed westbound towards Medford Street. The bike lane returns to street level to cross Walnut Street and then returns to sidewalk level, passing behind the bus stop. Raised crosswalks are shown across all side streets again, as well as curb extensions into Pearl Street on the south side of the street to prevent people from parking too close to intersections. At Walnut Street, curb extensions are shown on the northwest and southeast corners of the street, again reducing crossing distances across Pearl Street. The westbound bus stop is relocated to the far side of the intersection, and it's shown as a floating bus stop, which means the bus does not have to conflict with the bike lane and also does not have to pull in and out of the travel lane. The eastbound bus stop at Walnut Street is similarly relocated to the far side of the intersection as an in-lane bus stop on a wider sidewalk so the bus does not have to pull in and out of the travel lane. On-street parking is shown on the south side of the street. This remains in its current location adjacent to the larger apartment buildings. Finally, once again, clear corners markings are added to the parking lanes on Walnut Street to improve visibility at the intersection. I will now turn it back over to Viola to talk through the last section of Pearl Street.
Thank you, Justin. So the last section of Pearl Street is between Jasper Street and McGrath Highway / Dana Street. As we mentioned previously, the scope of this project ends at Dana Street. However, we are communicating with the DOT team to ensure that our designs will work with future changes on McGrath Highway. In this section, you see there's currently no parking on the north side and some parking on the south side closer to Jasper Street. The westbound bus stop on the north side is right before Wesley Street, and the eastbound bus stop on the south side is right across that. In concept 1, the protected bike lane continues eastbound on sidewalk level until right before the intersection to McGrath, where it transitions to street level and it shares the lane with the pullover bus stop. The bus stop for the bus heading west towards Gilman Square stays in the same location as where it is now, but a curb extension creates more space for waiting and allows for easier bus operations as the bus does not have to pull over. The bus stop eastbound moves closer to McGrath Highway, away from residential driveways, and it will be in front of the gas station. Parking shifts to the north side in this concept. Raised crosswalks are added across all side streets, Wigglesworth, Wellesley, and Jasper Street, and the right turning lane is eliminated. Again, this is coordinated with the DOT team for the McGrath Highway project. Concept 2 proposes a bike lane in each direction in this section. The same bike lane treatment as in concept 1 is shown on the south side, going eastbound. That is on sidewalk level between Jasper Street and the bus stop, and then it turns into a shared lane with the bus stop on street level in front of the gas station at the intersection of McGrath Highway. On the north side, we propose to continue a sidewalk level bicycle lane from Wigglesworth Street until the westbound bus stop at the corner of Dana Street, where it then goes onto street level. Same as in concept 1, all side streets show raised crosswalks and the right turn lane onto McGrath Highway is gone. Now, with all that information just shared, Justin will give an overview of all of them.
Thanks, Viola. So that was a lot of information. So this next slide is really trying to summarize the major differences between the two concepts that we presented just now. So first, the bike circulation In concept one, it's primarily an eastbound bike lane, except for a two-way section between Medford Street and Skilton Avenue, which is shown as a two-way bike lane on the south side of the street. And then again, to serve the eastbound direction of bike travel, we have proposed a route that uses a short section of McGrath Highway and Aldridge Street, and then the Gilman Street, Skilton Ave neighborway to connect up to the two-way facility on Pearl Street. In comparison, the bike circulation in concept two is primarily a one-way westbound bike lane, except for a two-way section between Jasper Street and McGrath Highway, shown as two one-way bike lanes on each side of the street. To serve the westbound direction, we have a proposed route that uses Medford Street up the bridge, one block of the community path, the existing two-way bike lane on Walnut Street, and then back to Gilman Street neighborway and Jasper Street to connect to the short section of one-way eastbound bike lane on Pearl Street. Moving on to parking, concept one shows parking on the westbound or north side of the street, while concept two shows parking on the eastbound or south side of the street. The parking is always opposite side of the street from where the bike facility is. At Walnut Street, concept one places curb extensions on the north side on both sides of the intersection. In comparison, on concept two places curb extensions on the northwest and southeast side. The placement of curb extensions matches the side of the street that parking is on due to space constraints. At Marshall Street, concept one shows a fully raised intersection, while concept two shows separate raised crosswalks. Finally, at Medford Street, in concept one, the southern block of Medford Street, coming from the bridge, is realigned to intersect perpendicularly with Pearl Street and includes a new stop sign. The northern block of Medford Street coming from Magoon Square is connected to flow seamlessly into the beginning of Pearl Street. This design is consistent with prior streetscape planning for Gilman Square. In addition, two raised crosswalks are provided across the intersection. In comparison, at Medford Street in concept two, Pearl Street is realigned to intersect perpendicularly with Medford Street. Two raised crosswalks are also provided in this concept, but their location is slightly different. This next slide shows anticipated parking impacts of the designs we just presented. The existing Pearl Street has approximately 33 parking spaces, and both in concept one and concept two, we see a reduction of 10 and 11 parking spaces approximately. Concept one relocates parking to the north side of the street, while concept two retains parking on the south side where it exists today. Concept one provides opportunities to locate new loading zones directly in front of some existing businesses, while concept two retains parking primarily in front of existing residential buildings. Please note that the parking space counts are approximate and they may change as the design continues to be refined. I'll now turn it over to Kate.
Thanks, Justin. Excuse me. I'll now describe some next steps. So we want to talk through how your input will shape this project. We really want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback on the concept designs that we've presented in this phase. So from May to June, please share with us which concept you prefer and how you have, and if you have any specific preferences for the different intersections and circulation options. We also want to hear your overall feedback and questions on the proposal. As Yola described earlier, we'll then work over the summer to incorporate this feedback into the updated design. So when we come back in the fall, we'll bring that updated design back to you to gather feedback on whether we met our goals and if we're missing any more details before we finalize and work towards construction. So then really into the next winter, we'll share the final design as we work to attain a contractor and get a construction schedule. At this stage, when we're going out to bid for that contractor, we won't be collecting feedback to make changes to design, but focusing more on fielding clarifying questions. So we want to just highlight kind of the overall picture of all the different ways we aim to engage community members. We spoke about some of those that we shared kind of when we were preparing to develop the concept design. We'll continue to use similar tools, such as engaging community members from virtual office hours, tabling at local community events like Carnival coming up on June 1st, or providing in-person direct outreach and online survey opportunities. We'll also continue to connect with our transportation-focused city advisory committees and spread the word about the project in major city communications channels. So what comes next? From now until June 13th, please consider taking our concept design feedback survey. This is available at available at somervillema.gov/Western Pearl. And it's available in English, Spanish, Nepali, Haitian Creole, traditional Chinese, and simplified Chinese. If you prefer to take this over the phone, please don't hesitate to call 311. They'll log it with a member of our staff who will then return your call and take the survey with you. Consider coming and talk to us. We've got some outreach pop-ups on May 19th from 4:30 to 6:30. And we'll also be tabling at Carnival from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. on June 1st. We're hosting 2 virtual office hours over the next couple weeks. One available on May 22nd from 5:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. And the second is a lunchtime option on June 11th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And you can register in advance for these virtual office hours at our project website. And at any point, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team at transportation@somervillema.gov. So thank you for your time and interest in this project, and we look forward to hearing from you.